Something really interesting is happening in the Clarksville, Tennessee apartment market. It's like it's telling two completely different stories at the same time. On the one hand, you see all these new buildings and the asking prices look pretty high, but just under the surface, there's a big shift going on. So today, let's break down what's really happening, right? So if you're out there looking for an apartment in Clarksville, you've probably seen that the rents, the sticker price anyway, are still up there. But then you start talking to people, renters, landlords, and you hear something else. That kind of frantic, gotta sign now energy from the last couple of years, it's just gone. So what gives? What's the disconnect here? And yeah, a picture like this really captures that whole contradiction, doesn't it? You see these shiny new buildings popping up, and the prices they're listing would make you think the market is absolutely on fire. So if you're just looking from the outside, you'd think, hey, business as usual. But that's really just the surface story. The real story, the one that actually affects your choices and your wallet, is about a fundamental change in how this market works. The whole relationship between renters and landlords is being redrawn right now as we speak. So let's talk about that, the mood of the market. Because markets aren't just spreadsheets and data points, they're about how things actually feel when you're in them. And the feeling in Clarksville right now, it's changing. It's going from what felt overheated and frantic to something a whole lot more competitive and, well, balanced. So what does that feel like day to day? Well, for one, instead of apartments getting snatched up in a matter of hours, you're seeing buildings that now have to compete for good tenants. And remember those huge automatic rent hikes every single year? Yeah, those are really flattening out. Plus, with all the new construction finally coming online, renters actually have more options to choose from. You can just feel that pressure letting up a bit. And all of this leads us to the core idea here, what we're calling the Great Rebalancing Act. Look, this isn't a crash and it's not a boom. It's more like a return to normal, a return to a healthier market, and it all comes down to that classic story of supply and demand. Okay, so think about it like this. Just a couple of years ago, we were deep in the boom. Demand for apartments was just through the roof, and there simply were not enough places for everyone. Then came the slowdown. Now, demand didn't vanish, not at all, but it went from a rolling boil down to a simmer. And that brings us to where we are right now, the rebalancing. All that new supply, all that construction is finally starting to catch up, and that gives renters a whole lot more leverage. Now, we could throw a dozen different charts and graphs at you to explain this, but honestly, the whole story can be told with just one single simple idea. And if you get this one thing, you'll understand the big shift that everyone's feeling. So instead of looking at the price of rent, let's think about the speed of the change. The key word here is momentum. It's kind of like a car, right? You can be going 60 miles per hour, which is still fast, but if you take your foot off the accelerator, that feeling of surging forward is gone. You're coasting, you're not accelerating anymore. That's exactly what's happening with rents. And if we were to draw that out, it would look something like this. A few years back, the bar for rent growth would have been huge, representing those massive year-over-year jumps. But today, that bar is way, way smaller. Now, rents might still be ticking up a tiny bit here and there, but that explosive upward force, that feeling of being pushed forward, it's just gone. The momentum has stalled out. So look, if you take just one thing away from all this analysis, let it be this. The era of explosive double-digit rent growth is over. It's behind us. The new story for the Clarksville apartment market is all about stability and finding a new normal. Okay, so we've covered the what and the why of this market shift, but what does this rebalancing actually mean for you? Whether you're a renter, a landlord, or maybe an investor looking at the area. Let's get into the practical side of all this. This shift really creates two totally different realities. For renters, honestly, this is mostly good news. You've got more choices, you have more time to make a decision, and this is the big one. You have more leverage. Negotiation is back on the table, and that doesn't just mean haggling over the rent. It could mean locking in a great rate for a longer lease or getting a better unit in the building for the same price. Now, for landlords, the game has changed. It takes more work to fill those empty apartments, and keeping your current tenants happy is absolutely critical. That renewal notice isn't a slam dunk anymore. And if you look at it from an investor's point of view, the pressure is really on property operations. It's not about just riding a wave of rent growth anymore. It's about running a really tight ship to make sure your residents want to stay. We might even see some of those concessions come back. Things like a month of free rent or waiving amenity fees. And we've seen a bit of a trend where smaller local owners have been selling their properties. But with interest rates being so high, the big dollar buying and selling of buildings has really slowed down. Everybody's kind of in a wait-and-see mode. So let's bring this all together. What are the new rules of the road for navigating the Clarksville apartment market? Because the playbook that worked just 2 years ago, well, it's pretty much outdated now. And this is probably the single most important thing to remember. It's so easy to see growth slowing down and think something is broken or that the sky is falling, but this market isn't breaking, it's just bending. It's bending back toward normal after a period that was, let's be honest, pretty unsustainable. And that leads to the final critical point. Whether you're a renter trying to find a great place or a landlord trying to find a great tenant, the old strategy of act fast or you'll miss out just doesn't apply anymore. The new name of the game is patience. In this new market, the people who are going to come out ahead are the ones who take their time, do their homework, and wait for the right opportunity. So the real question is, are you ready to adapt to this new pace?